gathered along the years of study and dedication to Spiritism. With your guidance, protection, and permission, we open tonight's meeting, and so be it. So, good afternoon, dear friends. Today, we will have our dear friend Wendell Almeida talking to us about who is my mother and who are my brothers. A very interesting passage from the gospel that, in many cases, are brought out of context and or sometimes in context as well, that can be misunderstood, right? That can be misleading. Not the message, not the statement, but the actual way that we deal with it. But before I pass the word to Wendell, Wendell was born and raised in Brazil and has been studying Spiritism for over 20 years. Professionally, he holds a law degree from a Brazilian university, and currently he works remotely as a civil servant at the Court of Justice of Sergipe in Brazil. He has been living in the US for the last 2 years, is married, no children, and has been attending the SSB meetings and study group sessions since the beginning of the year. Today is an opening talk for a dear friend, Wendell, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about this passage that perhaps we study in the Gospel according to Spiritism as well, but it's always good to revisit and learn more from it. So Wendell, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I like this introduction. It made me look more important than I really am. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Daniel and Leo, especially for having invited me. I want to say how happy and honored I am to be here at the Spirit Society of Baltimore, this institution where I was so friendly welcomed the first time I got here that it made me feel like I was already part of this big family. So I'm really happy for that. So the topic we chose to talk about today, who is my mother and who are my brothers, is based on the Gospels of Mark and Matthew. I mentioned my source of research there as in case you guys want to get a little bit deeper with the subject. I used the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Spirit's book, Anuário Espírita. I didn't find a translation to English. I found one in Spanish, but in English it would be Spirit's Yearbook of 1986. O Consolador, The Consoler by Chico Xavier in the Spirit of Emmanuel. Jesus in the Home by Chico Xavier in the Spirit of Neo Lúcio. The Constellation by Divaldo Franco in the Spirit of Joana de Angelis, and the Genesis. So, as I said, this topic is based on the Gospels of Mark and Matthew. Both of them say the same thing, only that Mark says a little bit more. He brings a little bit of information about this passage. So we're going to read this passage that is found on the chapter 14, Honor Your Father and Mother, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is kind of a mix of what is found both in Mark and Matthew. So it says the following. And arriving at the house, they found such a large crowd of people gathered there that they could not even eat their meal. When his family learned of this, they came to take charge of him because they said that he had lost his mind. Therefore, when his mother and brothers arrived, they remained outside and asked for him to be called. Now the people were seated around him, and someone said to him, Your mother and brothers are outside calling for you. But he answered them, Who is my mother and who are my brothers? And looking at those who were seated around him, he said, These are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does God's will is my brother, my sister, and my mother. So it is in Mark chapter 3, verses 20 through 21 and 31 through 35, and Matthew chapter 12, verses 46 through 50. So bringing to context. At that time, Jesus was already well known and followed by many people who wanted to listen to his teachings and also be cured on their disease and help it about their material issues. Although Jesus used to speak outdoors in very simple place, in this opportunity he was inside a house, surrounded by a crowd that was preventing his mother and his brothers to from having access to him, and so that's why they asked someone to tell him that they were outside waiting for him. And then Jesus comes with this question. And question: what is the first impression that comes to mind when we read this passage? I don't know about you guys, but to me, it sounds, at a first glance, that Jesus was expressing some kind of indifference for his mother and his brothers, that he was expressing that he didn't care if they were outside because he was talking to someone else more important inside the house, right? And what do you think about it? Would you think it would be, do you think it'd be reasonable to believe that Jesus, this spirit that we know and has taught us nothing but love and respect, and especially to honor our father and our mother, to perform such an attitude? I don't think so. It sounds like controversial, right? To say the least. And that's not the only controversial passage that we can find in the gospel. There are some others. When my knowledge with Spiritism was even shorter than it is today, I used to read or listen to, more often, to be honest, listen to some passages of the gospel that got me intrigued and confused. Because they were not according to what I knew or what I know about Jesus' character and personality. So there is this chapter in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 23, Stranger Morals, dedicated to clarify 4 of these passages. It's controversial. We're going to have a quick read of some part of this passage so you guys can have an idea of what I'm talking about. The first one is about hating father and mother. And it goes like this. A large crowd of people was walking with Jesus when he turned to them and said, "If anyone comes to me but does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be a disciple." It is in Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 27 and 33. The next is about forsaking mother, father, and children. And it says, "Whoever has left his home or his brothers or his sisters or his father or his mother or his wife or his children or his lands for my name shall receive 100-fold and shall have eternal life as an inheritance." It is in Matthew chapter 19, verse 29. The next one is about leaving to the dead the care of burying their dead. He said to another, "Follow me." But he responded, "Lord, first I must go and bury my father." He replied, "Leave to the dead the care of burying their dead. As for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." It is in Luke chapter 9, verses 59 through 60. And the last and most interesting, in my opinion, is the one when Jesus said he had not come to bring peace but division. "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace but a sword. For I have come to separate a man from his father, a daughter from her mother, and a daughter-in-law from her mother-in-law. And a man will have as enemies those of his own house." It is in Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 through 36. So, who was this person? Why did Jesus say such things? We are not going to discuss this passage right now, okay? The only purpose of mentioning them was to tease you guys towards the intention of know a little bit more about them and to realize that there are some controversial passages in the gospel. Although it's also a controversial passage, the passage we are discussing today is not on chapter 23, but on chapter 14, as I said, entitled "Honor Your Father and Mother." And we think about the title of the chapter, the words in the passage sound already contradictory, right? Jesus tells us to honor our father and mother, but he says that anyone can be his father, his mother, and his brothers in the passage, okay? So why is it important that we understand the real meaning of Jesus' words? Why do you keep coming here to the spiritual center, listening to the lectures, like Leo's series of talks about parables? Because we know that that's the only way we can use Jesus' teachings as a tool to improve our inner moral transformation. If we don't understand this message, his message, it is useless for us. It's like someone who is sick and looks for a doctor who prescribes a treatment in a language that this person doesn't understand. They will look at the recipe, won't understand, won't make the treatment, and won't find the cure. That's like us. Sometimes we are sick, spiritually, morally. We have Jesus' teachings in our hands, but we can understand them. So they are useless. And when we think about what we find in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 15 through 17 and 26, we remember that when Jesus was in the Last Supper, he was telling his apostles that he was leaving, but he was going to send us a consoler, the Spirit of truth, who will teach us all things and enable us to understand all things that he had already taught us. And he did it. He did send the consoler. As we know, it is the Spiritism, as we believe, right? So, why now that we have access to all of this knowledge the Spiritism brings us, why do we allow us to keep misunderstanding Jesus' teachings, and by that wasting the opportunity of correctly use this knowledge as a guideline to our spiritual progress? And if you think about it, isn't that one of the reasons why there are so many different religions in the world based on the interpretation they do of the Bible? I don't know if you guys saw the lecture of last week with Luis Lima here at SSB. If you did, you saw he mentioning that there are about more than 41,000 denominations of Christianity around the globe, right? Each of them interpreting the Bible according to their principles, right? And some of these principles are not only different, but also incompatible with other religions. And I'll give you an example of that. We Spiritists, we believe in the exchange with the spiritual plane, right? And we know that part of our practicing is based on the contact with spirits, right? Like in a mediumistic meeting. For some other religions, this exchange is prohibited. So what for us is necessary, for others is prohibited, right? That's why we need to find a common sense to understand Jesus' teachings. Because these misinterpretations can cause division, intolerance, prejudice, and keep us as hostage to distressing and despairing conceptions that can lead us to anguish, because sometimes we think that we are not living according to Jesus' teachings, right? That's why we're dedicating some time today to talk about this passage. So, what to say about Jesus' brothers? The existence of biological brothers and sisters of Jesus is not unanimous among the interpreters of the Bibles and theologists. Some of them think that when the Bible says Jesus' brothers, it's not referring to biological brothers, but to this affective bond that unites us all as sons of God. Sorry. We must remember also the controversy about the Immaculate Conception of Jesus, right, and the virginity of Mary, even after he was born, as some believe. But that's something to dedicate a whole other talk, or maybe a workshop to talk about, right? Fact is that in the Bible we can find some mentions about Jesus' brothers, and I mentioned that in Galatians, Acts, Corinthians, Mark, Matthew, and John. And especially about John. We're gonna find in chapter 7, verses 5, he's saying that Jesus' brothers, they did not believe in him. So Jesus' brothers did not believe in Jesus. And the same information is found in the chapter in the Gospel according to Spiritism on chapter 14, on item 7. Regarding his brothers, it is said that they never held him in much esteem. Being little advanced spirits, they did not understand his mission. In their opinion, his behavior was bizarre, and his teachings did not touch them, since he did not have one disciple from amongst them. It seems to a certain extent they might even have shared the prejudice of his enemies. The fact of the matter is that they welcomed him more as a stranger than as a brother whenever he met with his family. Isn't it interesting? So we know that Jesus didn't find in his brothers the same consideration and respect that he had by his disciples and apostles and followers, right? But can this information lead us to the conclusion that because of that, Jesus started treating them with indifference as a payback for the way he was treated by them? Another question. Let me tease you with a question. Can we even believe that Jesus was disappointed or frustrated about the way he was treated by his brothers? Or it's more likely that Jesus knew exactly who he was dealing with? Because let's thinking about something. We know, according to Spiritism principles, that while we are incarnated, we are protected by something called the forgetfulness of the past, right? As a proof of God's mercy to help us to achieve the goals of our reincarnation plan. Because if we were aware, if we remember the circumstances about our past lives, they could interfere in the way we act. So an example, if I knew that my brother took my life in the past life, it would be more difficult to develop for him the sentiment, the feeling of fraternity, right? So that's why we have to forget. Can we say the same applied to Jesus? That he needed to forget about his past? Because let's remember that 4.5 billions of years before he was here, he had coordinated the creation of this planet, right? That's why he's called the governor of the planet Earth. Therefore, at that time, he was already a Christic spirit, right? Meaning a relatively perfect spirit that has nothing else to improve in his evolution. So Jesus didn't have proofs or expiations while he was here. Everything he did and said was in order to teach us something, to show us something. So we must assume then that he didn't have to forget about the past. He knew everything. He knew everybody. He could see with the spiritual eyes, and then he could see beyond the character that he was talking to. So when Jesus talked to Simon, for instance, he could see more than the fisherman that he had just met. He could see the spirit that Simon was, with all the circumstances that he had faced during his existence, right? So there was no surprise for Jesus or disappointment about the way his brothers treated him. So that's not the reason why he asked, who are my brothers? Okay, but let's set this aside and we'll come back later. What about Jesus' mother? What to say about Mary of Nazareth? What we find in the Gospel according to Spiritism about her? Well, in the same chapter 14, item 7, we find the following. As for his mother, no one could question her tenderness toward her son. However, one must also agree that she too seemed not to have had a very precise idea about Jesus' mission, as she was never known to follow his teachings or give testimony regarding him as did John the Baptist. Maternal solicitude was the sentiment that predominated in her. So we know that Mary didn't have a very precise idea of Jesus, right? But different from Jesus' brothers, we know that Jesus' brothers, who we know were very little advanced spirits, Mary was a very highly evolved spirit. And this information we can find in this on this article, Notícias de Maria, News from Mary in English. As I said before, I didn't find a translation to English. I found it in Spanish, so I translated myself. And that's why I ask you to be kind enough to forgive me for any mistake. So that's what the article says. A highly evolved entity who had already achieved over 2,000 years ago high virtues, making her capable of carrying out such a high mission on Earth's surface, receiving in her arms the emissary of God, who became a child to transform into the model of moral perfection that humanity can aspire to on Earth. So we know that Mary was not anyone, right? She was very special. Some religions highlight the importance of Mary because of the fact that she gave birth to Jesus. But it's quite the opposite. She only was chosen to be this spirit whose body would serve as an instrument to bring Jesus to material life because the merit that she already had, right? And Jesus knew about her because nothing in God's plans is random. We know that everything is planned in detail, right? If we think about our reincarnation plan, we know that when we go to Nosso Lar, the book, and we remember that there is a ministry of reincarnation where everything is very planned with so much care. Imagine about the coming of Jesus to this planet, right? So it couldn't be any spirit. It has to be someone special. So we know that that's not the reason why Jesus asked, "Who is my mother?" And beside that, Jesus knew, he was very aware of the importance of the family to our spiritual progress, right? I gathered some information in the Spiritist literature about the importance of family regarding our spiritual progress. So in the book Family Constellation by Divaldo Franco, Joana de Angelis says, family is the fundamental foundation upon which the immense structure of society is built. In the small domestic group, the experience of universal brotherhood begins, rehearsing the steps for noble commitments in favor of building a balanced society. So we know that it's when we are a child, among our family members, that we have the opportunity to shape our personality, right? To shape our character, to develop the virtues that are recorded on us by God since He created us. And they are waiting to be awakened us. And she goes on. In all forms of life, there is this divine energy, which in humans manifests as consciousness, discernment, reason, love, and wisdom. Within the family, this noble sentiment finds fertile ground to develop, bringing joy to the fragile beings who are beginning their journey, as well as those who provide them with security. So let's remember that as human beings, we are not able to survive if we are born and we don't have anyone to take care of us. Different from some animals, we need someone to take care of us. But that's not only about the material provision, right? We need someone to teach us all the things that we need to know in order to go on our journey to spiritual progress. On the Spirit's book, on question 775, Kardec addressed this question to the spirituality. What would be the result for society if family ties were relaxed? And the answer was a magnification of selfishness. Because it's only in family that we can develop the virtues regarding to charity and fraternity and solidarity, which are totally the opposite of selfishness. So if you don't have contact with our family, we wouldn't be able to develop this. In the book Jesus in the Home by Chico Xavier and the Spirit of Neo Lucian, chapter 1, we find this information. The home is the first school and temple of the soul. The home is the true exporter of individuals for community life. World peace begins under the roof that shelters us. If we can't learn to live in peace within four walls, how can nations expect to coexist in harmony? If we can't love the brother or sister right next to us and who is involved with us in our daily struggle, how can we revere the eternal Father who seems so far away? Right? So it's an exercise. We exercise the love by God, the love towards God in our family. Because if we are not able to love the ones who are close to us and we know we can touch, how can we be able to love something that is out of our comprehension? Right? Because God is out of our comprehension. Spirit is bringing some information about his attributes. But we don't know much about God. Right? So how can we declare that we love God if we are not capable to love the ones that he put around us? Right? So back to the Gospel according to Spiritus, the same chapter 19 and the same item 9. As far as Jesus is concerned, to believe that he denied his mother would be to show ignorance of his character. Such an idea could not have animated the one who said, "Honor your father and your mother." Hence, it's necessary to look for another meaning for his words, which were nearly always shrouded in the view of allegory. Right? We know that Jesus used to speak metaphorically, like using parables, for instance, right? Because he knew that we were not ready at that time to understand everything very clearly. So, what did he mean with this statement? Who is my mother and who are my brothers? We are going to find this answer in the book O Consolador, or The Consoler, by Chico Xavier, where Emmanuel brings this answer on question 342. The answer of Jesus to his disciples, who is my mother and who are my brothers, is an encouragement to the building of universal fraternity. And the answer is, the Lord referred to the precariousness of blood ties, establishing the formula of love, which should not be confined to the particular environment, but linked to the universal environment, on whose roads we should observe and help fraternally all those in need, from the apparently happiest to the most unfortunate in fate. So, that's the idea behind Jesus' words. Universal fraternity. So now, we are ready, right? Now, we must know what universal fraternity means, because if we don't know, it's useless for us, as I said. Let's first talk about this expression that Emmanuel brought us, the precariousness of blood ties. What did he mean with that? We're going to find this reflection on item 8 of the chapter 14. It's entitled Corporeal Kinship and Spiritual Kinship. And it says the following. Blood ties do not necessarily establish ties among spirits. The body proceeds from the body, but the spirit does not proceed from the spirit, because the spirit already existed before the formation of the body. Parents do not create the spirit of their children. They do nothing except furnish them with their corporeal envelope. But it's their duty to aid in their intellectual and moral development in order to help them progress. So, our spirits do not descend. It's interesting to say our spirits, as the spirit was something beyond us, right? My spirit. We know that there's not my spirit because I am my spirit, right? I'm not a body with a spirit. I am a spirit temporarily in a body. But just to illustrate, let's say our body, our spirits, do not descend from our parents' spirits, right? Our physical body, our material body, it's a combination of their genetic material. The same doesn't happen to the spirits. But we know that to come to material life, we're going to need our parents. There's no other way unless we want to go against natural laws, right? That's why Jesus need Mary to come back here, right? Because Jesus is powerful, he could everything. But he said, I didn't come to disobey the law. So he needed to come in the traditional way, right? Conception, pregnancy, and labor, okay? And that happens to us as well. Spirits who incarnate in the same family, especially among close relatives, are most often sympathetic spirits connected by previous relationships that are expressed by their mutual affection during earthly life. Nevertheless, it may also happen that such spirits are complete strangers to one another. And it is. We tend to think sometimes that our family unit repeats, but sometimes not. I can incarnate in a total different family where I have never been, who I have never been with, because I need to teach and learn, help, and be helped, right? And sometimes we feel that. Sometimes we recognize these bonds of affection that we have with our family members, but there are some ones who ask themselves, what am I doing here? What is my part in this? How am I relating to them? Because they don't recognize, but they have to go deep inside to know, because as I said, nothing is random. The family we are incarnated has a reason for us, right? You don't have to think about it. It thus follows that two individuals born from different parents may be more like brothers through their spirits than if they were brothers through blood. They may attract each other, search for each other, and feel happy together, whereas two brothers related by blood may repel each other, affect attested to every day. This moral problem is one that only Spiritism can resolve by means of the plurality of existence, right? Of reincarnation. It happens all the time. We can love our siblings, but sometimes we have a friend who we have more affinity, more sympathy, some more ideas in common, and we develop a different kind of love with them. And sometimes two siblings can hate each other with no reason. It can happen the same way. So often there is a much greater sense of fraternity between two friends than between two siblings. And at other times, someone may recognize a much greater maternal and paternal figure in someone other than their own mother and father, right? Very common as well. So now that we know the meaning of this expression, right? The precariousness of blood ties, we know that the spiritual ties are more important than the blood ties, right? The blood ties serve us for this experience that we are living now. But the spiritual ties, the spiritual bond, it's more important, we know. And how is it important to understand the concept or the definition of universal fraternity? I'm going to skip these definitions that I found on Google, and let's go straight to this concept that I found on the website of World Mission Magazine. The World Mission Magazine is a Christian institution, and on their edition of January of 2024, we can find this definition of universal fraternity. Universal fraternity refers to the unity and solidarity amongst all human beings, regardless of their differences. It is a vision aiming at the search for peace, harmony, and cooperation between everyone, valuing equality, compassion, and mutual respect. This universal fraternity lies upon the premise that all human beings are part of the same global family, which shares a fundamental unity with one another. So, I highlighted all human beings regardless of their differences and same global family. Because it doesn't matter who I come from, which language I speak, what's the color of my skin, what's my gender. Because we are all spirits, right? And we are all part of the same global family. And what is this fundamental unity that we share, everybody? We are all creations of God, right? We were created at the same way and we are going to the same place. We are fate to the same destination, which is, thank God, perfection, right? Back to the Consoler by Chico Xavier. Emmanuel brings these two more concepts. On question 349, fraternity and equality can on earth deserve a single concept? And the answer was, we have already observed that the absolute egalitarian concept is impossible in the world, given the heterogeneity of tendencies, feelings, and evolutionary positions within individuality. Fraternity, however, is the law of mutual assistance and common solidarity, without which all progress on the planet would be practically impossible. Meaning that we are all different. When we study the moral law of equality in Spiritism, we learn that we are all different. If we come to the spiritual plane in different circumstances with different capacities, and that's why we can produce different, we can achieve different, and we can maintain things differently, right? And they said that if we, at some point, we gather all the resources in the planet and divide equally to everyone, sometime later, it would be not equal again, because everybody would lead with that according to their capacities, right? But the point is, we are responsible to try to decrease these differences. We are responsible to make effort to try to bring everyone to the same situation-ish, right? Question 350. Can fraternity manifest without selflessness? The answer was, fraternity can be translated as sincere and legitimate cooperation in all aspects of life. And in every genuine cooperation, personalism cannot persist. It's worth noting that whoever cooperates always gives something of themselves, bearing witness to selflessness, without which fraternity would not manifest in the world in any way. So fraternity, it's interest-free. It has to be genuine. So we have to do without expecting nothing in exchange. The Genesis also brings us some ideas about universal fraternity. On chapter 1, character of the Spirit's revelation, on item 56, we will find the following. With the help of the new insights brought by Spiritism and the spirits, human beings comprehend the solidarity that connects all beings. Charity and fraternity become a social necessity. They do because of convention what they would otherwise do only because of duty, and then they do it better. So we are all in a kind of level of evolution that we already follow some laws of God, right? But we must recognize that some of these laws we don't follow by convention. Maybe we would like to go in a different way, but we know there is a law, call it law of cause and effect, action and reaction. And then it tells us that if we don't go according to the laws of God, we're going to face the consequences. But there will be a time when we have introspect this sense of universal fraternity, that we are going to follow the laws of God by conviction, by comprehension, because we love them, because we know there's no other way to act if not according to the laws of God. On chapter 18, the time has come. We have been discussing this for some weeks now, right? On item 19, it says the following. Unity of belief will be the most powerful bond, the solidest foundation of universal fraternity, which has been shattered throughout history by the religious hostilities that have divided peoples and families, making them see dissidents as enemies to be avoided, fought against, and exterminated, instead of brothers and sisters to be loved. Any relation with the situation we are facing right now, with this era of polarization, when we tend to see everyone who thinks in a different way from us as enemies. And we forget that by the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing, a better situation for everybody, only according to their beliefs, right? I think that green is better for everybody. You think that pink is better for everybody. But we want the best for everybody. So there will be a day when we have introspect this concept of universal fraternity that we will stop to fight against each other and we start to fight together against the circumstances that are preventing us from having a better place to live. On the same chapter 18, item 17. Fraternity must be the cornerstone of the new social order. However, there can be no true, solid, and effective fraternity unless it rests upon an unshakable foundation. That foundation is faith. Not faith in these or those particular dogmas, which change with the times and peoples who cast stones at one another, because by anathematizing one another, they feed hostility. But faith in the fundamental principles that everyone can accept: God, the soul, the future, the ongoing progress of individuals, and the perpetuity of relationships among them. When all people are convinced that God is the same for all, that this supremely just and good God cannot want anything unjust, that evil comes from humans and not from God, then they will regard one another as children of the same Father and will shake hands with one another. Beautiful, right? That's the idea of universal fraternity as Jesus wants us to understand. Because for him, love is universal. There are no boundaries regarding family and friendship and community and race and social, ethnical, and cultural identity. Because for him, everybody is part of the same global family. But we know that for us, that we are way far from his level of evolution, right? So we still need these smaller unities, these bubbles, like family, workspace, community, where we can express love and care in a more strong and effective way. Right? We still need it because we are not ready to the universal family yet, right? And we must know that sometimes we find ourselves denying love and care to the ones who are close to us. And someone can say, oh, it's much more easier to be good with the ones that are away because relationship with the ones that are close, it's so difficult. Yeah, they may be right, but we must remember that charity is about benevolence, but also about indulgence and forgiveness. And who are the ones who need indulgence and forgiveness from us the most, if not the ones who are close to us? Right? That's why we need to pay attention in our relationship, in our family relationships. There will be a day when our happiness will depend on our neighbor's well-being, on this collective sense of happiness, right? And when we see a neighbor not happy, we're going to make everything in our power to make them happy, because that will be a condition for our happiness. Until there, we could exercise and practice Jesus' teachings of care and charity and love among the ones that God brought us to be around us, right? And then we are not going to skip steps in the journey towards our spiritual evolution. Guys, I guess that's it. That's the message I wanted to share with you today. There was a reason for that. I don't know if it applies to the whole world, but I'm sure that here in the US, Canada, and also in Brazil, tomorrow, May 12th, we are celebrating Mother's Day. So I thought it'd be pertinent to talk about the importance of family to us. Okay. So thank you very, very much. And I heard there are no questions, so I'm leaving. No, I'm kidding, but please have mercy. No difficult questions.
You wish. Yes, I
Thank
was
you.
about to say that. David. Thank you. Thank you, Wendell. This is a very interesting topic for sure to talk about today, right? It's the eve of Mother's Day. So thank you for bringing this concept, and it made me think a lot about, honoring thy mother and thy father and those around us as well. So thank you for that. I would like to open up for questions, comments here. If anyone would like to ask a question or comment. Daniel?
Thank you. Was wonderful. So, regards to the topic of this passage, who is my mother, who are my brothers. So, do you think when Jesus asked this to whoever came to him, Jesus was already give the hint about multiple lives, in the sense that when we study reincarnation spiritism, we know that different of other religions or philosophy, reincarnation, we don't reincarnate, in the previous kingdom, right? So reincarnate as a human beings. And by take this in consideration, we can assume that we have had many mothers, many brothers, right? And perhaps the family that we live right now is not truly our mothers and our brothers. So what do you think about?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, sometimes we tend to think that we are reincarnating the same family unit along our existence, but it's not true, right? And I am son of my parents now. I am brother with my siblings now, but I don't know what happened in the past life, right? So what Jesus maybe meant is that we have been reincarnated along our opportunities in different positions, right? In different places, maybe in different planets, because we can go to different planets to learn and to teach as well, right? So I think that, as I said, referring, using again last lecture by Luis Lima, Jesus used to talk to spirits, right? Because he was seen, he saw in spirit there. So that's why we couldn't understand him that time, because we maybe had a different idea. I can say that we had no idea, because we know that reincarnation is not something that was made up by spiritism, right? But the idea of reincarnation, as we know, it was brought by spiritism. But we weren't ready at that time to listen about reincarnation. But Jesus knew everything about us, right? And he saw us as spirits. And this relationship between us, among us as family members, are going to repeat in different ways and happen in different ways in the future. So according to our necessities, according to the convenience of our spiritual progress and evolution.
Thank you, Wendell. I have a question. You touched a little bit on the idea of how Jesus was not understood, and I'd like to ask, if you have practical ways that we can put into practice in our lives to deal with the moments that we are not well understood, even with our failings. When we err against others, that we don't want to do that. We did by mistakes, and we make mistakes, and we're not understood. We're not forgiven, right, by others. So just to because I believe, I can say this in a nice way, speaking for everyone, we do feel left out sometimes, right? That we're like, what am I doing here, right? And that is not only by, through with our family members, like the blood tie ones, but at work or other locations that we visit. So, with this study, what would you say? What are the things, or one thing that you can say to live a more harmonious life?
Well, we must remember that as a spirit, we have, I wouldn't say a mission as this meaning of, oh, I'm a missionary, I'm a so good spirit, so I'm a missionary spirit. No, I'm not saying that, but we have tasks here, right? And we must remember our tasks in the family unit that we reincarnated, right? So everything we know, we must share in a very respectful way, respecting the different point of views from us. We must let that this difference can be some point of division between us. But as long as we find a fertile ground, we can try to work there, right? Because it's kind of our tasks. We can't bring this knowledge for ourselves. So we can try to tease step by step to some discussion, right? And I think that's that's key, because when you want the other to think the way you do, and you don't accept anything different, so there's no harmony in this life. So you have to be respectful and available. We have to be available, because sometimes we know we had access. We look at others and we say, "Oh, poor people. They believe different from me." So, but we are not ready to help them when they are open to be helped.
Thank you. So we have a question from Paula. What explains Mary being an evolved spirit and not understanding Jesus' mission? What do you think she made of his preaching? I will say it again. What explains Mary being an evolved spirit and not understanding Jesus' mission? What do you think she made of his preaching?
When I said the forgetfulness of the past wasn't necessary for Jesus, we have to take into consideration his mission, right? So it was important that he knew everything that was about to happen, or if he knew, I don't know. But we can say that the same happened to Mary, because Mary had a role here, and he accomplished. He fulfilled his role, right? He brought Jesus in her body to be brought to life. He did it, but I don't know. I think that she had other aspects and circumstances in her life that she had to care about, to deal with. And so that's why for her, maybe it was necessary, the forgetfulness of the past, which didn't apply to Jesus, right? It's not only about the evolution of the spirits, but the convenience of the fulfillment of the reincarnation plan of the spirit, right?
Very well. And there was Mary did not do anything, to say the least, right? Because we know what she did afterwards, right? But she did nothing that would put at risk what he came here for, it, right? Otherwise, she wouldn't be the mother. So thank you. That's very, very nice way. Thank you. Kirsten.
Great talk, Wendell. I mean, it was heartwarming and like for lack of a better word or way to put it, like a warm blanket to snuggle up with hearing this talk. I wanted to just add, because I was reading recently from the book Boa Nova, or The Good News. As one of the chapters, the first couple of chapters, that talks about Mother Mary as she is sitting and reflecting with her cousin Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist, right? So, and it's a really interesting, I think it's Umberto de Campos from the book. So he details in the chapter Elizabeth and Mary observing John and Jesus as young children, and both of them, although not fully understanding the greatness of those two individuals, they knew in the text that they were special, and they could tell even from a young age. I think Umberto de Campos retells watching John and Jesus standing off in a distance, looking over a mountain or something like that, very like poetic. And basically the text is Elizabeth and Mary saying, and I'm paraphrasing, like, wow, these are really different boys, but they're special. So they had a notion to some degree, although, as you said, not fully, but it's an interesting read.
Thank you, Kirsten.
No, yeah, and we must remember the day that Mary decided to visit Elizabeth, and she was already pregnant, and she didn't know. And Elizabeth had that mediumistic expression when she said that phrase to Mary. And I think that at that point they knew already that she was carrying something special in her, right? So I think it's not important actually if it was an immaculate conception of the way Jesus was conceived or not, if it is according or not to the natural law, but we must remember how special spirits they were, and how it was necessary, because it could, as I said, it couldn't be anyone, right, to serve as instrument of Jesus in their body. But yeah, I think that as I said, she didn't have a precise notion about his mission, but he felt something. She felt something, right? And in the end, in the cross, when he looks at her and John Baptist, and he said, "He's your son, and she's your mother. There's your son, there's your mother." It's beautiful because Jesus knew what she represented, right? And all she did it after. We know that she had a hospital in the spiritual plan, the Missionaries of Mary, and how she helped Judas and everything we know. So, yeah.
Thank you, Wendell. So a quick comment from Jefferson. It says, you can be in the same room with someone and feel very distant, and you can be thousands of miles away from someone else and feel very close. Talking about affinity. Very interesting message. So, indeed. We're going to move to a comment by Adriana, and then a follow up by a question. She says, congratulations on the explanations. Very gratifying. And then she has asked in Portuguese. I'll try to translate to the best of my ability. She says, why the other religions interpret in different ways the message of Jesus negating his mother and his brothers? Why other religions have interpreted the message of Jesus negating his mother and his brothers?
Well, I think the same reason they interpret every other passage, right? According to their beliefs and their principles. Because some religions are made of dogmas and principles, right? So if they interpret in a different way of what they preach, their religion won't make any sense. And again, talking about last week's lecture, I made this question to Luis Lima. If some religions of doctrines intentionally interpret the passages in a different way, or if they change the way of the meaning of the passage just to feel to meet their interest. And he said, yes, of course, because they want their dogmas to make sense. Otherwise, it won't make sense, right? So it's, as I said, for us, being in touch with spirits is necessary. Otherwise, we won't have the opportunity to do the mediumistic work. But some other religions say, no, it's prohibited. It's in the Bible. It's written in the Bible. What you are doing, it's wrong. So they have to say that. They have to sustain that, Otherwise, their principles won't make any sense, I guess.
Thank you. And we do have other thank yous as well. Many of our friends who were watching us online as well. Paula Schmidt saying thanks for all the diverse diverse references that you brought. A great presentation, Wendell, by Vladimir Abreu as well, and many others who are following us online. We'll open up for any final questions from the crowd here. Anyone would like to ask a question or comment?
Thank you, Wendell. Was wonderful again. And maybe you should come back and talk about the strange moral, the other ones. You already gave some hint for us about those controversy that we have in the gospel. Because I think as the first one about, those strange moral, I think you did pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Although the gospel according to Spiritism is not to bring controversial things, but to explain, but it can be controversial. So Wendell, thank you again for this beautiful explanation. And we would like to take this moment to move on to the second part of our meeting tonight. Thank you.